Ladies and gentlemen, now singing the Mike Ferrin Open, it's Mike Stibbs.
Just make sure it sounds sexy, Stibbs.
Lord Almighty, how can you stand Arizona? Your fair skin must be burning down into your absent soul. Mike, 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 we can barely hear you. It sounds to me like you called us from inside a hole. But your phone calls lift me higher, like the ERA of Mark Pryor. Your hair looks like it's on fire. You're Mike Ferrin. You're just a hunk of burning love. You're just a hunk of burning love. You're just a hunk of burning love.
Well, unfortunately, in Major League Baseball, the talk of the sport, and will be for a while.
The Cubs game last night?
Yeah, the Cubs game last night. Okay, stop. You're supposed to be unbiased. No laughing. He's smiling.
22 years since they'd blown an 8-run lead and lost.
Oh, yeah, it was bad. And like I said, it happened fast.
I apologize.
I mean, in between the time that Dan Hurley was cutting down the nets and Val Ackerman cut down the net, then the Cubs had blown an 8-run lead.
Maybe that's what did it, is that like the universe is in constant balance. So you were so happy for the Hall of Famer Val Ackerman that you had to be disappointed in the Cubs. But although you're used to that.
Sacrifices must be made for the good of the cause.
Mm-hmm. True.
But we've lost a number of guys. We've lost Shane Bieber. We've lost Yuri Perez. We've lost Spencer Strider. Obviously, Garrett Cole started the year away. And this is all about pitching strain in the elbow. Last week, the owners came out with a statement. The players union wants to blame the pitch clock. The two sides are again talking over each other. It frustrates me because something like this isn't just a one-size-fits-all, this is why it's happening. It's multifaceted, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not new either. I mean,
no.
I think there has been a greater reemphasis over the last 2 years on injuries. I think some of it is because of the number of star players that have been hurt over the last couple of seasons. But listen, I think it's like, you're right. It's multifaceted, right? I would say though, that we have a pretty clear idea that the number one contributing factor to it is the increased velocity that everything is thrown at a constant level. And there's a couple things about that. Like, one, it makes sense, right? The harder you throw, the more strain you're going to put on elbow ligaments and tendons. This includes, and there you get, that was from a great piece that Eno Saris did today, and how often pitchers are throwing their stuff at max velocity. But it's not just fastballs, it's all the secondary pitches too. I mean, there's a pretty significant difference in the ability for hitters to have success on breaking balls that are over 85 miles an hour. And you think about that, think about when we were kids, how few guys threw 85 mile an hour fastballs even, right? Like, this is when John and I were kids, not when Josh was, because the velocity has continued to increase. And so the problem is that there's no putting that genie back in the bottle, because what we know is that velocity helps to make the decision window shorter for hitters. As much as hitters have been blamed for the strikeout issue, the issue actually is probably tied more to velocity. They're also throwing fastballs less than ever before and throwing these hard breakers more frequently. So it's, how do you train velocity safely? And I don't think anybody has an answer yet. I mean, the thing that I'm most frustrated with, there are a couple of things I'm frustrated with. One, both sides screaming at each other without any empirical data that they're willing to share is problematic. The league, after the Players Association blamed it on the pitch clock, the league went right back and said, well, we've got this study from Johns Hopkins. Well, nobody's seen the study. It's in peer, right? So it's not worth the paper it's printed on yet until it gets through peer review. So that's a big problem with it, is that we're all of a sudden we're just pointing fingers. The other is that we have spent, like, it's been almost 10 years since Jeff Passan's book, The Arm, came out, about 14 and 15, when there was this massive spike in Tommy John surgeries and elbow ligament issues. And yet we're still having the same conversation we had 10 years ago. Nobody has pushed it forward. And so it's almost like saying we've done nothing. We're all out of ideas, like it's like as opposed to saying, hey, how do we try and understand that this is something that is happening, especially when it comes to the increase in velocity and the way pitchers are chasing it, because that's how they're getting better results. And how do we try and find ways to make it safer? And I think, I don't expect the league or the Players Association to actually come up with that solution. I think it's going to be to independent places like Driveline and Tread Athletics to find a way to do it. And the problem is a lot of it's going to be trial and error, and we're not going to have answers for years and years, because the collection of data on it is going to be, take ages. So it's an unfortunate situation. I don't like it, right? But I hesitate to say that it's an existential crisis with baseball. Everything gets framed as a giant crisis with baseball that's threatening the very nature of the sport. But I do think it's something that clearly needs to be addressed, because we want to see the best pitchers pitch more frequently.
By the way, the graphic that Mike was referring to, we have up on the screen for the people who are listening on radio, this is the average fastball velocity is the red line, where the blue line is the peak fastball velocity thrown in any one game. And the thing that's crazy is, from 2006 to today, in 2006, the average fastball speed was around 92 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Now it's scraping 95.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but that's about where Nolan Ryan sat, right? For average he finished 100, but he usually sat about 95, and he of course was the freak.
Well, he was the outlier, and now everybody's Nolan Ryan, right? Like, I remember having a conversation. This is probably going back 7 or 8 years ago with Randy Johnson, talking about how he's like, listen, I was really intimidating in that time when I pitched, but guys today, I don't think would be bothered by the velocity that I see. And that's the other thing, is that hitters are becoming more comfortable. It's on the away from the pro side. I've been doing a lot of ACC games, and we've been talking about the imbalance in offense to pitching in college baseball right now. And I was asking for coaches' input on what they thought it was. And a large number of them think that a part of it is that hitters are just more comfortable with velocity too. So you keep chasing it as a pitcher because you need more, because the more the average ticks up, the more hitters are adjusting to that, right? And so that's why you're seeing, I think it's something like 47% fastballs right now at the major league level, which is an incredibly low number. If you were to go back without looking, I would guess that in 2006, it was probably closer to 60%.
Mike, you said safer earlier. Like, what can they do to make this safer?
I don't know.
Like, what ideas have you heard that you're like, that maybe could do it?
Nobody's had anything that's come up that's the problem, is that, like, everybody, like, the league is consulting 100 different people on this, right? Like, the leading experts, doctors and trainers and all of this, and trying to figure out. Nobody has any answers. That's the problem. And I'm not sure that there is one. I think everybody is hoping that there's some sort of magic solution to this, but I'm not sure that it necessarily exists. And that's a big concern. And listen, like, this extends to the youth level too. I'm sure that we have a lot of parents whose kids are, playing baseball, who are also chasing that velocity. And, one of the more stunning things that have come out this week is Anthony Castrovins had an interview with Dr. James Andrews at MLB.com. And one of the things that Dr. Andrews said was that teenagers should not be throwing over 80 miles an hour. Well, like, because of the health of the ligament, the UCL, the Tommy John ligament, doesn't mature until you're 26 on average. And if you're thinking about that, like, use this as a point of reference. Last year, Charlie Soto was a supplemental first-round pick of the Twins. One of the reasons they took him is that he was touching 98 regularly as a high school student. So I remember the first time I saw 96 from a high school, and I was like, ooh, wow. And Kumar Rocker was throwing 98. Ooh, wow. Yeah. And that's like, now it's lots of guys are doing that. So it's, I don't know that there's an easy answer to any of this. It's difficult to try and assess, but my hope is that we stop pointing fingers and stop saying this is a problem and start spending more time discussing what potential solutions are, and not just like, hey, I got this idea, like actually well-researched, data-driven solutions, right? Yeah, I mean, whether it's via data and through medical professionals and all of that, some level of expertise, as opposed to just saying, let's lower the mound, which there's no proof that reduces stress. In fact, some of the ASMIs look at that a decade ago, thought that it might actually add stress on the arms pitchers.
Interesting.
Why was it that Major League Baseball decided to reduce the pitch clock down by 2 seconds with runners on base? Because, I mean, after we had such great success last year with the game times being reduced and everything else, I don't know. It didn't seem like it was necessary.
So I think there's a couple of things. I mean, one, it has been that way in the minor leagues for 2 years, I believe, that they've had that 18 seconds with men on base instead of 20. And so I think they have more data on it. I think the other part was they were concerned that the average time of game was creeping up as the season went on into more like the 245 range. This is not meant to be cynical. This is actually, the other major crisis that baseball is facing is, where's all the TV money going to come from? And if people are watching sports on TV, how do you get more people to watch baseball, right? Other than making it more accessible, which would be really nice, especially for those people that are living where you live, where you're blacked out from 7 teams right now, right? But I think there's...
My damn TV thinks it's in Iowa.
But there's like 2.5, like they're shooting for a game that's in that 2.5, 240 range, 2 hours, 30 minutes, 240 range. And so they were trying to back it off to get to that. Again, there's no empirical evidence to back up the players' claims on the pitch timer. And I think a lot of them recognize the benefits of it, but they also felt like this was an unnecessary change based on something we just had seen, and we had seen it have success. And again, we don't have a lot of data on how it works at the major league level. Now, put this giant asterisk on it. We have had a pitch timer in the minor leagues for close to a decade. It was not as aggressive as the current one is. That came into play more in 2021, I believe. It's either 2019 or 2021 that became more prevalent late in the season in the Cal League. It must have been 21 because we were doing fall league games with it. And that's the one we have now, which works really, really well. Mm-hmm. But again, like the league may have more data on this, and the injury levels that are increasing, they have been increasing over these years, but they have been increasing at a similar rate to the way velocity has gone up.